Hey everyone, welcome back to Anyone Can Cook with Lauren. I am Lauren, and today we're going to be making one of my favorite comfort food recipes. We're going to be making pickle soup. It's awesome for wintertime when it's a little chilly out, you feel like you have a cold, you just want something comforting. It's awesome. It sounds a little weird, but don't knock it till you try it. It is awesome. So we're going to start here by cutting up some onions. And I have a pot on the stove back there. It has a tablespoon of olive oil and a tablespoon of butter heating up on just under medium heat. We're going to chop up these onions and then we're going to saute them in the pot until they are kind of see-through and translucent a little bit, so for a few minutes. So the first time I had this recipe, this pickle soup, was when my husband and I had started dating. We went to Montreal on a trip after Christmas. And we did not realize that in Montreal and in Canada, some parts of Canada, they celebrate Boxing Day after Christmas, which means nothing's open. It's a holiday still. So this one Polish restaurant was one of the few places open for dinner that night. So we ended up going there, and it was the most warm and inviting and comforting place that I had ever been to. The food was amazing, pickle soup was amazing, and it was just the best thing ever on a minus 25 degree night. Now you may notice I also have a kitchen glove on. It is a cut-proof glove because we are going to be doing some dicey shredding later, and I don't want to get my fingers with a cheese grater. So better safe than sorry. So it sounds like our butter and our oil are heating up over there. So I'm going to go ahead, we're going to put these in and going to stir them up until they are translucent. So a few minutes should be good. All right, now while the onions are cooking, we're going to stir them a little bit in between just so they don't burn. So what we're going to do now is we're going to gather up our liquids to put in the pot, because once the onions are done cooking, we are going to add in our liquid and let it come to a boil. While it's boiling, we're going to take care of the rest of our ingredients here. So I'm just going to gather up those ingredients here real quick. We're going to add those to our onions once they are done. All right, so now that our onions have cooked down a little bit here, you can see they're kind of starting to get a little bit see-through, a little bit translucent. That's what you want. So once those are cooked through like this, we're going to go ahead and add our liquid. So for our liquid, for the broth here, we're going to add 2 cups of water. Give that a little stir. All right, just about 4 cups of chicken broth. You can use 2 of the cans from the store that are the 14.5 ounce, or you can just get a carton and measure just under 2 cups per time. So we're going to put 4 cups in. I already put 2 in. We're going to put these 2 in. Okay. And then the secret ingredient for this recipe, the special ingredient that makes it the pickle soup, pickle juice. We're going to do 1 cup of pickle juice. All right, and our 1 cup of pickle juice. All right, so we're going to stir that up here. We're going to let this come to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, we're going to put in our vegetables and our shredded pickles. So while this is heating up, we are going to go ahead and get those ready. All right, so now that while all of that is heating up, we're going to go ahead and cut up our vegetables for the pickle soup. So we have a whole carrot. We have 1 whole rib of celery or 4 celery sticks, and then a bunch of baby red potatoes. You can use about 4 or 5 large potatoes if you'd like. I prefer using the baby potatoes because it's easier to cut them up and they will cook a little bit faster. So I'm going to go ahead and just get that ready here. And I'm going to just take the vegetables out of the bowl for now so that we can put our finished vegetables in the bowl because they're all going to go in at the same time. Just going to take those all out here. All right, so we're just going to cut these up into either little triangles or circles, whichever you'd like. I kind of prefer to just cut them into quarters here and then cut it into quarters again just to give it little triangles. They'll cook faster too. And I don't really bother peeling carrots, to be honest. I know a lot of people do, but it's really just for aesthetic purposes. It's totally fine to eat the outside of a carrot. You just want to make sure you wash them really well because you don't want to have any dirt in there. It's not going to taste very good. So I'm going to go ahead and just throw these all in the bowl. Now, if you're someone that is nervous using knives, or, you know, you don't have a lot of coordination yet, the cut-proof glove is nice to have because you don't have to worry about hurting yourself or accidentally cutting yourself. I have a couple of these, and I also have a mandolin slicer, which is why I have the cut-proof gloves. I lost a piece. All right. So now that the carrot is roughly diced up, I'm going to go ahead and move on to our celery. With celery, I always like to chop off the ends because the ends are a little bit dry, a little bit tough. You can see when they've been cut in the packaging, they dry out pretty quickly. So you just want to get that off there because it's going to be tough if you try and eat that. Even if it's cooked, it's not going to taste that good. So, same as with the carrots, I'm going to cut these down the middle so that they're a little bit smaller, and then just chop them up. Now, the idea of pickle soup to a lot of people does not seem very appetizing, but it actually works really well because once everything is boiling in the broth, when it's close to being finished, you add sour cream and that kind of pulls it all together. So we're going to do that after, and there's a certain way you need to add it or else it will curdle up on you. But it just has a really nice, savory, salty, sour taste to it, like a tangy taste. And I personally didn't think I would like it, but I do like pickles, and sometimes I make my own pickles too. And if you make homemade pickles, you can use them for this. It's not going to taste, I think, as, pickly as the ones from the store, but you certainly can, and I have too before. All right, gonna move on to our potatoes here. Now, if your potatoes have any kind of rough spots on them, any kind of the eyes on the potatoes, just cut those off so that they're not tough when you eat them. Now, you can use russet potatoes. You can also use yellow golden potatoes. I like using red potatoes. They have a better flavor to me, and I do like that the skin is in there as well. It just gives it a little bit of color too, so it's not just all, tan. So for the potatoes, just going to quarter them. Maybe quarter them again for some of the larger pieces. So a question of the day for everyone out there. What is your favorite pickled anything? Do you like pickled foods at all? I have coworkers who do not like pickled things at all. I have some people who love pickled everything. My husband loves pickled eggs, regular pickles, any kind of pickled food. I personally really just like dill pickles and sweet pickles, and that's pretty much it. Sometimes spicy pickles, but anything else pickled, like eggs or pickled cabbage, peppers, things like that, not my thing. But pickle soup, absolutely. And we have served this before with kielbasa too, making just a side of kielbasa on the stove or in the oven. I believe that's the side that I had it with when we ate at the restaurant in Montreal. And then we're going to move on to the good part. We're going to move on to shredding pickles. Now, you may have noticed that I also don't peel my potatoes either. And that's because you also don't need to peel potatoes if you don't want to. Most places do it just for texture and also just for the visuals, like not seeing bits of skin in mashed potatoes or anything like that. But I honestly don't really mind. I think the skin on the red potatoes is pretty thin and it cooks down really well. There's no weird taste to it, and as long as they're clean and you wash them, it's fine. Okay, so now that our vegetables are all cut up, we're going to go ahead and shred the pickles here. You just want to be very careful with this. So I will take those out We're going to shred them just into this bowl because they can get a little bit juicy. And you want to use about 4 to 5 whole dill pickles, the bigger ones. If all you can find are the baby ones, I used maybe 7 or 8 of the small ones. You just want to have a good amount of pickles in the soup here because that's the whole body of the soup. It's the whole reason for it. If you have a regular cheese grater, you can use that too. I just prefer using this one because it's smaller. So it's going to have a better texture in the soup if there's smaller pieces of pickle in there. And just make sure you're wiping it off the back of the grater as well because it can kind of gunk up back there. Once you get down to the end here, you want to be very careful that you don't get your fingers, especially if you're not using a glove. So you kind of want to just very slowly finish that up and then set it aside. And we're going to move on to the next one. And just get the extra pickle off there. And our onions are starting to boil over there. Our chicken broth, water, and pickle juice. So we're going to go ahead and finish these up and we're going to get everything in the pot. Now there may be some bigger shreds that get in there. That's fine. It's all going to taste amazing. Now the traditional pickle soup that we had at the Polish restaurant did not have all the added vegetables to it. It was really just sour cream, broth, onion, and pickles, I think. Maybe carrot was in there too a little bit, like shredded carrot. But mostly it was the pickles and the broth. This, however, is meant to be a meal, not just a side dish, while that was meant to be a side. So that's where all the potatoes and the celery and the carrots come in. And I'm also going to serve this with some slices of French bread because that is, in my opinion, the best way to have it. Part of my family is French descended, and I will say I love a good baguette. I am probably guilty of literally walking around my house just eating a baguette before in college. All right. So we got all of that shredded up there. Try and get the last of the pickles off of the grater. And we're going to go ahead and add everything to the pot. Okay, so now that our onions are boiling in our broth here, we're going to go ahead and we're going to add all of our vegetables. You want to be careful putting these in because they will splatter. So I might even use the spoon here to help out. Because I'm not a big fan of getting splattered on by boiling liquid. I do it all the time by accident, boiling potatoes. So the spoon, definitely helpful. Once you have enough in there, you can always just slide it in like this. I just like to get some of it out first before doing that, so it's not getting liquid everywhere. All right, so give that a good stir. And then we'll go ahead in with our shredded pickles. Ooh, yeah. A little extra pickle juice in there. All right, there we go. Okay, we're gonna give this a good stir. And this will boil for about 10 to 15 minutes until the potatoes are cooked through and the carrots. Once that is done, we're gonna go ahead and incorporate the sour cream. The sour cream takes a little bit of a special extra step because if you just throw sour cream in here, it will curdle. So what we're gonna have to do is temper the sour cream where we put it in its own bowl, mix it with some flour, and then slowly add some of the boiling liquid to it. That way it kind of, incorporates slowly. That way when we add the whole thing in, it doesn't just turn into chunks because that would be gross. So we're gonna let this boil and come on back with the sour cream when it's done. Now for the pickle soup, I am using a pot that's called a French oven. They also have ones that are called a Dutch oven, kind of similar. This is a ceramic coated cast iron French oven. And I find that it kind of heats a lot more evenly than just using a metal stew pot. I do have one for when I make bigger batches of things, but for French onion soup, for pickle soup, for stews, for chili, I tend to use this just because it will heat more evenly. And honestly, it's a nice pot to use. I like having pretty kitchen pots sometimes. So we're gonna go ahead and let these finish up. Okay, so since our vegetables are almost done boiling, I'm gonna go ahead and prep the sour cream mix. So here you'll see I have a cup of sour cream and I have 2 tablespoons of flour. And I'm just going to stir those up here with a fork to make sure that they get nice and blended. You can use a spoon if you want, but I find that the fork tends to get rid of any chunks of flour and it just kind of incorporates it a lot better. So once those are well mixed, then we're going to start putting the liquid from the pot into the sour cream here. It'll kind of look like almost like whipped creamy, frostingy when it's done. All right. Gonna give this a good stir and see how we're doing here. And a good way to test the potatoes and carrots is you can poke them with a fork, and if they're nice and tender, if the fork goes through no problem, that means they're done. We still have a couple minutes though on the time anyway. So while we're waiting, we're gonna get the sour cream ready. Okay, so I have a 1/4 cup here. What we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and get some of the liquid out of the pot, trying not to get any of the vegetables in it, and we're going to mix it into the sour cream. So you just wanna kind of bring it to the edge of the pot and just get some of the liquid in there. It's okay if some onion or pickle gets in there because that's gonna happen. Those are pretty small. Just none of the bigger vegetables, if you can help it. So we're gonna go ahead and pour that in here slow and try and mix while you're pouring so that it can incorporate a little more evenly and keep it from trying to curdle up on us. And we're gonna do this a few times just to make sure it's ready and to make sure that we mix all of that in really well. Oop. As I fling soup onto the stove. All right, so number 2. And just stir that up there. Try not to have any chunks in this either, because those chunks will end up in the big pot of soup, and that does not always go over well. And I think one more time ought to do it. It's also getting the sour cream to the same temperature, which you do not want to add something cold to a boiling pot because it will not go over well. It will not mix well. All right, it's just making sure I don't have any chunks in here. See how everything is nice and mixed together. It's nice and thick. The soup has been incorporated in there. You just want to make sure that you get as much of the plain sour cream off the sides and mixed in as possible. All right, and I'm gonna grab a fork. We're gonna see if these are done. All right, I got my fork. So let's go ahead and see how we're doing here. Try and get a potato over here. Still a little tough. See how the carrots are doing. Yeah, still the same. So the vegetables could use a little more time. Probably give them maybe 5 more minutes and that should be okay. You don't want them to be too hard because then biting into them is not gonna be a great texture. So we're only gonna let them finish up here a little bit. Now while this is boiling, this is a good time to add your seasoning too. So we're gonna add some salt, about 1 teaspoon of salt to start with. So while our vegetables are boiling, this is actually a good time to add our seasoning. So we're gonna add a teaspoon of salt. I like using pink salt when I cook. So we're gonna start with 1 teaspoon of salt. Okay. We're gonna put in some black pepper. I would say about 1/2 teaspoon. Just depends on how much you like. And then we're also gonna add some dill. Since it is dill pickle soup, the extra dill in there just gives it a little more flavor. You can also put this on top afterwards as a garnish. I use probably like a 1/4 teaspoon. Just gives it a little something extra. All right, now since our vegetables are pretty much done here, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna add in the sour cream mixture. Give it 1 good stir for good measure. And you wanna be mixing while you add it in. So we're gonna go ahead and just mix that around as we're adding it in so it doesn't curdle, so there's no lumps. Just nice and smooth here. And we're gonna scrape some of that out too. Make sure you get as much of that out as you can, because it really is the true basis of the soup, is using sour cream. So we're gonna go ahead and give that a nice mix. It's nice and creamy now. This is like the definition of hearty. That's how my husband would describe it, as a hearty soup. And I think that's probably the best word for it. And we're gonna let this boil a little bit longer. Maybe give it a good, 3 to 5 minutes just to let everything kind of incorporate. And then we're gonna serve it up and see how we did. Anyone else ever pretend they were a witch as a little kid boiling a pot of soup? It still feels very witchy. All right, so here we have our finished pickle soup. You can see everything looks great in there. Potatoes and carrots give it a little bit of color. It's not super boring. You can see all the dill in there, the pieces of shredded pickle. It looks great, nice and thick too. Giving it a few minutes to boil once you add the sour cream thickens it up a little bit. Okay. And as always, little French bread on the side. So I'm gonna go ahead and give it a taste here. It is really hot, so we're just gonna give a taste to the broth. It has such a nice sour cream taste. Like, it's a sour taste, but it's subtle. It's more tangy than sour. The extra dill in there gives it a really nice flavor too. Dill kind of has like, not salty, but more like an earthy kind of herbal taste to it. So it's a little more subtle when you have it in like a soup. It's not overpowering. So we get some vegetables in here. Yeah, everything tastes great. The vegetables still have a little bit of firmness to them, but they're mostly cooked through, so it gives it a little bit of substance there. And best way to eat this, just dip it in the broth, take a bite. But all right, thanks for tuning in, you guys. As always, the recipe and the directions will be in the description below. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments, or any advice for anyone else, any other fun recipes that would go well with pickle soup, share them below. We are a little community here. So again, thanks for tuning in. This has been Anyone Can Cook, and remember, anyone can't cook.